Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is joining me, and I am in a hotel in Las Vegas, still here at the NBA's Summer League experience. It happens every single year, and it is a wild ride. Every single time, we're going to talk a little bit about Summer League at the end, but we're going to start today's show with a lot of the transactions and potential transaction news and notes that we need to get through. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Oh! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? I am obviously not in Vegas. I am happily back home in Kansas. Got here yesterday on Monday, and I was ready for cows and wheat, and I got a lightning show on the way home on my drive home from Denver. 3 days of Vegas, 4 nights was plenty, although I shared quite a very nice supper with you and my best friend from high school on Saturday night. That was probably my highlight of my weekend.
It was a great dinner. We went somewhere in Cosmo, Spanish tapas in Cosmo. Halejo, let's go with. Yeah, it was great. I had a great time. And then you and your friend drank like a bunch of sangria for a little bit. And then I was mostly like responsible. Like I've had 7 drinks in 6 nights. I have been like incredibly good about like getting home before midnight, 12:30, which is impossible to do here because a lot of the time these games end at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock when you leave the gym, 8:30 when you leave the gym, which is to say that you do a lot of late dinners. Basically, like I've only gone to like one thing really, like one like party-ish kind of thing, and haven't really gone out. And yet my eyes, like looking at my eyes right now on the camera, I just feel like my body is going into just like death zone. You know what I mean? I feel like my body is slowly but surely rejecting the Las Vegas that is happening.
Yeah, that was my one splurge night. I am a little embarrassed how much money we spent on that meal, but I didn't gamble a single dollar away. And that was the only night I really had any adult beverages. Otherwise, kept it pretty chill. Like I think I got more sleep while I was in Vegas than I do whenever I'm at home. But I was telling you, and this is true, like I really didn't drink the last couple nights. I woke up this morning and like felt like I had vertigo. Like, I mean, it was not feeling very good. So, yeah, it's, but glad to be back. Glad to be recording today.
So one of the first things that has happened since we have been in Las Vegas is, Bryce, can you turn your levels up? I tried to,
is that better? Is that better?
Maybe a little bit higher.
A little higher. I don't want to go too high. What about now?
I think that's going to be a little bit better. Yep.
Is that better?
Okay. That's going to be better. So one of the first things that happened is Jalen Brunson, right? Jalen Brunson has re-signed with the New York Knicks in what is seen as one of the great contract extension or really just favors to an NBA team that has ever occurred. He signs a 4-year, $156.5 million extension. Now, the key here is that he could have waited and could have gotten drastically more. By doing it now, he was only eligible for a 40% raise on his $25 million salary, which means that his extension number for 2025-26 is only going to be $34.9 million. Now, or no, it's what is it with the extent, like the increase in the salary cap, he's going to get a little bit more than that. It's going to be like 46.4 million, which is why the number just jumps a little bit. essentially what he's leaving on the table is he could have waited and signed a 5-year deal next summer at $269 million. But realistically, the key here are those first 3 years, right? He's giving up essentially $37 million in salary compared to a max deal next summer. That is a big salary cap saving. That is about $12 million per year in salary cap savings that Jalen Brunson is giving to the New York Knicks that he is declining to take on his deal. When you saw this contract, what was your immediate reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. It was something that people had talked about. Maybe he would do this and help the Knicks out in terms of that contract. I was just looking at overall player rankings here on Spot Track in terms of, average annual value. And this is going to put him, by them, they're at 34.9, 37.7, 40.5, and 43.3. Like, that's just putting him in a spot in the league that's not very high for the type of player he is right now. And so they're just, what he's saving them in terms of cap space and the flexibility that'll allow them, the money it saves them, all of that. My biggest thing is I saw there was a tweet, we'll get this money back 3 years from now, right? Like we'll be able to make it back. My worry, Sam, is, he is a smaller guard, even though he's built well. He's taking a lot of miles, a lot of usage. When he's 31 years old, 3 years from now, is he still going to have the type of leverage that he has current day? And so that's my worry, I guess, for Jalen Brunson. I mean, I'm sure he weighed those options, but that would be my worry in terms of, hey, we'll make it back down the road. I hope that he does, but that was kind of my first thought whenever I saw that was, man, entering his 30s, tons of usage. Is he still going to have that power to demand that contract?
Yeah, and to be clear, I think I misspoke earlier. The deal is $34.9 million in terms of what his starting salary is, and that'll escalate a little bit as he continues to get his 8% raises. But the name that came to mind for me, honestly, when I saw this deal was just Isaiah Thomas with the Boston Celtics, right? And God forbid anything would happen with Jalen Brunson, right? Like, we want Jalen Brunson to stay as healthy as he can for as long as he humanly possibly can. But what this deal does is it basically guarantees Jalen Brunson something in the vicinity of $240 to $250 million over the course of his career. NBA contracts have gotten so large at this point that by accepting this deal, Jalen Brunson can guarantee himself $250 million earned throughout his first, 10 seasons of his NBA career, and set himself up for success that way, right?
Sure.
If he was to get injured, any sort of crazy thing was to happen to him, right? And we are rooting against that in every way, shape, or form. Everyone was like, oh man, he could have gotten hurt this year and been able to sign this contract no matter what in the offseason. Somebody would have maxed him regardless. As a smaller guard, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have 100%. I'm just saying that I don't know that I 100% think that. Let's say that there is like a 90% chance that he would get $156 million or more even. He's basically getting a 100% chance at $157 million over the next 4 years versus having a 90% chance at $256 million over the next 5 years. And just to be honest with you, with like what matters to me as a human being, what I would care about if I was in his position, I would be like, I would want that certainty. Like personally, as a human being, I would want to know that I am not in this weird, like kind of middle ground where I'm waiting to get paid.
Sure.
I just want to lock my money in. Like you're telling me I get $250 million over the course of my first 11 years in the NBA. Great. Like, let's do it. Let's lock in. Plus, the Knicks have brought in all my friends. This is great.
No, this is I understand that very much. Feel like I'm probably like you, where I would value that in terms of, hey, security, this is what's the total of just this amount was, what'd you say, 156 million or whatever. That sounds like plenty to me. I can live with that. It's just, whenever you hear what he left on the table, that's a lot of money as well. And so that's my only thing is, I guess for Jalen, I hope that he is able to, but just as a fan of this game and somebody who, when I was growing up, I used to always hear people talk about, oh, like, why won't somebody take a little less to make the team better? And like you said, like there has to be value in being in New York, where he is the man in Madison Square Garden, where he's playing with all of his buddies. They all love it. And honestly, I feel like he's getting to play the style he wants, Sam. That's not a style that every player in the NBA gets. How many guys get to dribble as much as Jalen Brunson does? And this isn't a knock. I'm just saying, and he gets to do that. And they've built the exact team around him to allow him to do that. There's a lot of value in that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, and like I saw some people making like anti-labor arguments against Jalen Brunson. I was just like, guys, what are we doing here? I understand the idea that maybe people will use this against other players in salary cap negotiations. Guys, I hate to tell you this. If you look what's happening with Brandon Ingram right now, it's happening already. Yeah. Like, owners are already terrified of the second apron. That's a real factor. There's, to me, taking this deal was probably what is best for Jalen Brunson. On top of the fact that he gets to play with his kids or with his friends, on top of that he gets to play with in New York, where they've given him all of this freedom. They've allowed him to develop into a guy that finished top 5 in the MVP race this season, right? I just can't get past the fact that I think that this ultimately is the thing that makes sense the most for Jalen Brunson to actually do. And that can't actually be, I understand that, like, you know, there's an idea of the sum of what is good for all versus, you know, what is good for one single individual. But we really need to discuss at the end of the day that, like, the Jalen Brunson shouldn't be punished by this collective bargaining agreement setting up a circumstance where teams are going to be hesitant to give money to players that aren't quite max level players or can't be number one options, right? And Jalen Brunson certainly has proved that he can be a number one option. And like, I'm all for labor. Like, I think people kind of understand where my political leanings lie if you've listened to the show for a long time, right? But in this specific case, I think that argument is really misguided. And at the end of the day, NBA players make the same amount. They make 51% of what is in the pie between the NBA and the Players Association. They make that 51% no matter what, right? That's the reality of what this is. Because it didn't go to Jalen Brunson, it's going to go to some other player. That's the reality of what the collective bargaining agreement states. So, yeah, anyone trying to, like, make some weird anti-labor argument against Brunson is just, like, completely ridiculous to me. The other thing that I will say on the Brunson factor here is this sets the Knicks up for, like, a beautiful 3-year runway, as long as Mikal Bridges also, like, kind of sets up here and decides to sign a long-term extension. And I couldn't be more excited to watch this team. This is a team you and I talked about all year, is one that we truly loved watching. And now they get another just, like, monster defender, potential shot creator, very similar to OG Anunoby. We get to watch Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby defend the shit out of guys every single night. It's going to be awesome.
So I will say this, like, I agree with all of that. We talked about that trade when it happened, but I think now that it's over and done with, we know and feel that Mikal Bridges is a really nice fit there. They do have a couple, you know, obviously you would think that Bridges is going to re-up. Julius Randle has one more year, and then he's on a player option. So it is interesting to see what they do with Julius Randle. And then I think as much as we have talked about Isaiah Hartenstein going to the Oklahoma City Thunder, I don't think we've talked enough about what that has meant for what it could mean for the New York Knicks. Because I think that 48 minutes of those two guys at center when they were both healthy, and obviously that wasn't all the time, we saw a lot of missed time from Mitchell Robinson, was a huge part of that team's success. And I don't feel like, you may disagree with this, I don't feel like they've answered that question right now. And that's probably the one thing holding me back with him. I believe in Brunson. I believe in Deuce and Dante and the wings and all of that. But if you can't guarantee me 48 minutes of high level center play, I'm not quite as in on this team as maybe I would be otherwise.
And that is where I'm a little bit interested now. They just brought in Campaign, right? They have Tyler Kolek locked into a contract as well. Rokos Jokubaitis.
I didn't even mention Josh Hart. Like, I haven't even said Josh Hart. We haven't mentioned him, and he's obviously very good.
Yeah, shout out the Roommates show. But they have all of these guards now after signing Campaign, Tyler Kolek. We'll figure out what Rokos Jokubaitis is going to do. Maybe he just goes back and, plays in Lithuania or plays, maybe he stays, in Spain. Who knows? They have a lot of guards now, though, between Deuce McBride, Jalen Brunson, and those guys I just mentioned. I'm really interested to see if they use some of their depth there in order to go get a big in some way, shape, or form. I kind of have expected that they don't throughout this process up until the Campaign signing yesterday. I thought that signing was super weird and kind of like threw off flashing lights to me. Maybe I'm being overly conspiratorial in some way. But when I saw that signing, I was like, okay, maybe they are going to try and move from a place of strength at the guard position to decide to fill that center position, which is an intriguing option. I've kind of assumed the whole time that they would just kind of roll with Mitch, maybe re-sign Precious Achiuwa. Yeah. I am of the opinion that like Ariel Hookporty is like a third center along with Jericho Sims is a third center. Like, Hookporty would be the fourth guy in line here, that those guys can like steal minutes as much as is necessary for them as long as Mitchell is healthy. I don't know. Where do you fall on the Knicks center position? I've kind of assumed that they would kind of go cheaper here maybe.
Well, you know what I kind of kept thinking might happen because the Bridges trade wasn't done? I wonder if it expand, if they would find a way to get Day'Ron Sharpe thrown into that trade once they figured out that Hartenstein was leaving. Because I like Day'Ron Sharpe. I think he's really good. He does a lot of the Knicksy things in terms of he's a menace on the boards on both ends of the floor. He can protect the rim. And I think Day'Ron Sharpe can pass. Actually, the place I think Day'Ron Sharpe would be awesome is the New Orleans. I think the Pelicans could use a guy like that. So, we always talk about the free agent names. I'm like, but maybe Brooklyn wants to keep Day'Ron Sharpe. Maybe they're happy. It just, whenever Nick Claxton came back there on that huge deal, it just made me wonder if somehow New York could get Day'Ron Sharpe involved in that trade. So I don't know if there's a move like that. That's in one name. I don't know if there's another team out there that has a backup center that would be, you could get for a couple second round picks or something like that. I wouldn't go overboard, right? I wouldn't spend I wouldn't spend a bunch of money. I wouldn't trade one of my first round picks. I just wonder if there's a backup center out there. You can't do it right now, but Orlando, could you eventually get one of those guys away from them? I don't know. So that's what I would be looking at if I was New York.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's a regular season problem as opposed to an off-season problem. Like maybe you just figure it out later in the off-season and kind of make that work from there.
Well, that's where it came up, because I was like, what is the path to the Knicks winning the East in the regular season? Because you have 3 Celtics that are going to go play in the Olympics. Kristaps isn't playing till after the turn of the year. The Sixers, all they care about is winning in the playoffs. They got to load manage 2 of those guys. And I'm like,
they're going to take time to figure out all of their new pieces too.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a moving target for them.
I don't think we're picking the Sixers. We may pick them to win the championship, but we're not picking them to win the regular season. I just think there's a path to New York winning the East in the regular season. And again, this isn't me picking against Boston. I'm just wondering if Boston's may not quite as motivated, especially out of the gates, all of that. I would be crazy to say otherwise. But again, what holds me back is what if Mitchell Robinson goes down and they're not getting great center play, and then that's the hole for them? So that's why it keeps coming to mind for me, is like, what is the path for them to be the best team in the East during the regular season?
Yeah, look, I think it's probably Boston still,
Sure,
almost
sure.
like, unless the Kristaps injury just completely like craters them in the regular season and they lose Al. Like that's the guy that they really
Yeah.
can't lose right now is
Yep.
Al. I mean,
And if there's
obviously
any
you can't lose-
hangover for the Olympic guys,
Yeah.
right? Like if there's just, that's a
Fair.
long off season into the finals, 3 of them go play the Olympics.
Yeah, and look, you can't lose Tatum or Brown. Obviously, they're all NBA players, but like the guy that particularly is important, that is also into his very, very late 30s at this point, is Al Horford.
Yeah.
And he is a critical piece for them the early portion of the season. Look, I would have the Knicks number 2 in the East right now. I think they're
same.
a fantastic basketball team and couldn't be more excited to watch them. But do you know what I am also excited about, Bryce?
What's that?
I am excited about Arena Club because one of my favorite card collecting memories as a kid was those trading card binders that everyone had. It was like a whole playground marketplace. You would come, you would, trade with your friends, you would take a look at everyone's collections. It's come a long way since then, but now there's a new way to buy, sell, and trade cards. It's called Arena Club. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the all-in-one trading card platform you have to check out. Sign up for an account at arenaclub.com/game theory. I recently started using Arena Club and it's been a game changer. Not only can I buy and sell cards with ease, but I can also trade and display my collection in an online personal showroom. The platform is incredibly user-friendly. It has everything you need in one place. Whether you're looking to grade your cards with their innovative AI and human grading processes, or you simply want to make sure your cards are safe and authentic, Arena Club has you covered. Plus, they use blockchain technology. It means no more shipping delays, lost cards. Everything is instant and secure. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase by going to arenaclub.com. That's arenaclub.com/game theory. That's arenaclub.com/game theory for 10% off your first purchase. Grade, trade, and showcase your collection at arenaclub.com. Okay, Bryce, some other off-season things here. Let's knock out some of the signings that have occurred. Okay. So KJ Martin signs this 2-year $16 million contract, not $100 million contract. The Sixers might have signed him to a $100 million contract if they could have, in order to use him as a trade chip down the road. But they signed him to this 2-year $16 million deal. I assume that this is a contract that they are going to use in order to go get somebody in the middle of the season. That's the reality of what this deal is.
Yeah, that's what makes sense to me. I was in a group chat and somebody's like, KJ Martin, $8 million a year. What is this? And I'm like, yeah, it just makes sense that this is you hate to say it this way, but a $8 million trade exception. Like that's what it looks like. So, that seems like what Philly is doing here.
Seems like what Philly is doing to me as well. I don't know that we need to speculate on names at this point, but that's why that contract exists. Saddiq Bey signs a 3-year, $20 million contract. I think this is actually like a great deal for everyone. Saddiq Bey obviously is dealing with a torn ACL. He tore his left ACL in March, and he's probably going to miss a majority of the 2024-25 season. So you're kind of just paying for this, first year for him to get right. And then they're going to have like a 2-year, hopefully $13 million runway here to be able to have Saddiq Bey and see what he looks like coming off that knee injury. And this is the kind of player the Wizards should be taking a flyer on, in my opinion. Just continue to take chances on wings who have potential to shoot, right?
Yeah, I think this is a really smart deal for the Wizards. Like you said, it's a wing who, has shown an ability at times to knock down shots, especially his rookie year when he really shot the ball well. He's a bigger wing. I think he, little wingy forwardy. I think he actually defends better against guys that aren't quite as twitchy and as explosive and athletic.
Yep.
Like if he can use his strength, that's where his defense, at times he's rebounded better. And I don't think he's a guy where the ACL injury is going to really ACLs anyway in 2024, but I don't think it's really going to disrupt his game. He's not reliant on explosive movements, even when he tries to attack a closeout or something like that. And if it pans out, you have a 3-and-D-ish type of wing forward for $6 million. That's going to be what, 40% of the MLE by the time that contract and he's actually playing. And if it doesn't hit, we just talked about it, use it for $6 million in a trade, or you eventually get off of it. I think it's a great move. Saddiq obviously started out in Detroit, loved watching him play. And so, all the best for him in his recovery. Reunites with Troy Weaver, the man that drafted him there in Washington.
Yeah, I don't know how much juice Troy Weaver has in Washington, just to be clear.
The other part of that is he's also the guy that traded him for James Wiseman. So I'm sure people wanted me to bring up that part also.
That is accurate. Speaking of the Pistons, I don't think we actually talked about the official Cade Cunningham deal now that it's come down. From the reporting, it does seem like that it has, all NBA language in it, to where if he was to make the all NBA team next season, it would be a 30% max versus a 25% max. Any thoughts on just the details in the Cunningham deal now that we actually have it locked in?
No, I mean, we talked about this in terms of this is the situation the Pistons are in. They didn't have a whole lot of choice. I mean, if Cade Cunningham is all NBA, that means not only that Cade balled out this year, it means some of these other guys hit as well. And not necessarily the vets, but some of the young guys. J.I. took a step forward, or Duran, or Ron Holland was Bobby Klintman looks really good so far in Summer League. But, so that's, to me, it's a positive if he ends up hitting that, because it's not just Cade Cunningham's not making third team all NBA on a 20-win team. This team is going to be 500 or better, him being crazy good, and some of the youngsters. So I think it's worth putting that in there, because if he hits it, that means you really did something right in a turnaround year, hopefully.
Yep. I think that is dead on. Okay, final guy that has actually signed a deal. You better believe that we're taking a second to shout out the icon, Jack McVeigh. I couldn't be happier that Jack McVeigh is signed with the Houston Rockets. The Rockets have decided to give Jack McVeigh a 2-way contract. I've been talking throughout the year that I think McVeigh is an NBA quality player, at the very least worthy of a 2-way. And the thing that I am very excited about is anybody that you talk to around the NBL, anybody that knows Jack, will talk about just how unbelievably hard this guy has worked to get to this point. I thought this season he was a very clear first-team All-NBL player. I thought he was one of the most valuable players in the league, because he is an awesome shooter with real size and with real scoring ability. Like, he can actually attack a closeout, get into a spot, make like a little floater, like a fadeaway shot. In the NBL, he posted a little bit. That won't happen in the NBA, even on mismatches, but he can really shoot the basketball off the catch. If you give him open spot looks, he's going to knock down shots. And on top of it, he's just like this tremendous worker who's an awesome, awesome human, who's really, really going to get into, really going to be the right person to have around your organization and locker room. For Houston, this is a no-brainer. It's a flyer to take, right? Maybe he ends up being not quite athletic enough to defend. Maybe he ends up being somebody that can't quite make it on that end of the court. But I couldn't be more excited that Jack McVeigh got one of these deals, and I think he's fully deserving. The other guy that I'm watching to potentially get one of these deals from the NBL is Will Magnay. Also his teammate on Tasmania, also his teammate with the Australian Boomers here coming up for the Olympics. Wouldn't stun me by any stretch of the imagination to see Will Magnay get a contract in the NBA as a potential second or third pick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're a little, tied in, have watched these guys. McVeigh wasn't a guy that I tuned in on whenever I was watching NBL, but like you said, a guy that can really shoot it. What I'm impressed with is, the overall field goal percentage for a knockdown shooter. He's also, this season, was over 50% from the field, obviously good at the free throw line, contributed on the boards, offensively 1.7 per game. So these are the type of guys, he is 28 years old, but you take these type of guys, you take a chance on him, maybe it pops. Floor spacing is always super valuable, as we know, in the NBA. So if he's able to translate all of that shooting, hold up athletically, maybe you have something there. What's the worst case, Sam? You send him down in the G League and he provides crazy floor spacing for your G League team. I think there's worst case scenarios than that.
I think that's dead on. I really just couldn't be happier for Jack, because if you watched him at Nebraska, you would be saying, oh my goodness, like there's no way that this guy's an NBA player. And just the way he's worked into it is just really, honestly, like kind of inspiring. He has worked his balls off to get to where he is now and deserves so much credit. And I don't know if you saw the clip of him when he made the Olympic team. Just like immediately like broke down in tears because like that's
awesome.
what like he's wanted for a while. If you want to go search that out, I think that it's all over the internet if you search Shaq McVeigh.
Cool.
Really, really good dude. Okay. So now that we're done with the real signings, we're going to get into one more ad read here. It is for Tea of a Kind. If you're tired of energy drinks that bring you up just to let you down, the Tea of a Kind Torch Energy hydrates and energizes you at the same time by transforming your water into an energy drink so you can avoid the crash of traditional energy beverages. Tea of a Kind Torch makes it easy to try their products with their starter kit. Tea of a Kind Torch Energy is really innovative. The magic happens in the cap, which has a chamber filled with ingredients and pressurized nitrogen. Keeps everything fresh without preservatives. Just tighten the cap into the Tea of a Kind reusable bottle, and when you twist it off, the ingredients are instantly mixed with the water inside. No shaking needed. Just twist it and sip. One of the best parts is how convenient it is. You can carry multiple caps without the bulk and weight of traditional energy drink cans. Each cap has only 10 calories and packs 100 milligrams of caffeine. Plus, the flavors are amazing. Flash, Beam, Spark. Those are going to be your fruit punch, your berries, your watermelons. Tea of a Kind Torch is perfect for on the go, whether you're hitting the gym, packing your backpack, or traveling. A great tip is to take your Tea of a Kind bottle through airport security empty, refill it after, twist on the cap, and then you've got your favorite energy drink ready to go. Tea of a Kind is providing our listeners a discount for 30% off your first order using that code Game Theory. Try their starter kit, which comes with 1 reusable bottle and 6 caps, so you can try each flavor and refill from there. If you're not an energy drink person, though, Tea of a Kind has a variety of other offerings, including tea, yerba mate, other flavors launching soon. But enjoy the free shipping, and once you find your favorites, set up a subscription so you're never out of your favorite drinks. Check out all Tea of a Kind products at Drink Tea of a Kind, DrinkTeaOfaKind.com, and use that code Game Theory for 30% off your first order. Okay. 2 more things we have to talk about. First, I'll ask you, do you want to start with Lauri Markkanen or Brandon Ingram?
Let's do Brandon Ingram and kind of knock that one out, because I don't want to say I have less thoughts, but I'm kind of less interested in that than I am Lauri Markkanen.
Okay, so my colleague at The Athletic, Shams Charania, he wrote about Brandon yesterday. Brandon Ingram wants a high-priced extension, Shams said. And that means the Pelicans have to maintain a dialogue with him and his representatives on whether he stays in New Orleans or moves elsewhere. At the same time, David Griffin has gone on the radio, for instance, and discussed, hey, like, we really want to keep Brandon, but we understand the realities of our situation here. And, basically, he didn't say this, but what I read into this is we can't give Brandon Ingram like the max contract that he wants, basically, given their salary cap sheet. They're going to have to pay Trey Murphy here coming up. They have DeJounte Murray on the roster, obviously Zion Williamson as well. I'm really intrigued to see what happens now with Brandon Ingram, because David Griffin is posturing very clearly like they don't want to trade him. But to me, you kind of have to trade Brandon Ingram with where this roster is. There's not another case, I think. I think you have to do it. It's a very misshapen roster at this point. They have no bigs that I think can play as a starting caliber center in the NBA right now. All due respect to Yves Misty, who I think is going to be a good center down the road. Karlo Makovic, that was a deal to kind of, hit the bottom of the, rung in terms of tax payments to me. And then finally, they signed Daniel Tice as well. But Daniel Tice, there have been flashes of okay play, but for the most part, he's not an NBA starting caliber center. I'm not even sure he's like a backup center really at this point. He might be best as like a third big. So they don't really have a guy that's going to be able to play as that big position, especially for a team that, in the second half of the season really went forward into Zion Williamson being their primary creator. Obviously, now you have DeJounte Murray. I would imagine DeJounte will take up a lot of those possessions as well now. But I don't think you can have Zion be the big, have defensive responsibilities as a center, and then also be responsible for creating a lot of your primary offense as well. Where do you think this lands? I think I'm still on team. He just gets traded somewhere. But I the other problem I'm having is just finding the team, right?
Yeah, so that's what I'm on the team where I feel like he needs to get traded as well. That just seems between DeJounte, BI, and Zion, that's a lot of on-ball reps. Unless BI is just people have tried to tell me whenever there was talk about him getting traded to Detroit, and not that that wasn't actual reported, but whenever Pistons fans would talk about, hey, who could they go out and get? Well, maybe he'll transition into this off-ball player. Yeah, if you tell me that's what BI is willing to do, then sure, he makes a lot more sense there. But if not, that's already three guys. I think CJ is more accustomed to playing off ball at this point. I'm more comfortable with him in spot up situations than on ball situations. But again, I just don't think you need what BI provides now. And you have these two young wings in Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, who you have to give minutes to. I think it's fascinating to talk about the roster as is. Who's not going to start on that team? Because we've named 6 guys, and not one of them is a center. So you have to start a center, which means you're going to not start 2 of those. Are you going to not start Herb and Trey Murphy for the Pelicans? Are you going to ask CJ to go to the bench? What are you going to do if this is what you roll into the season with?
Yeah, honestly, that's a significant question to me as well. And it's not a question that they can solve by bringing Brandon Ingram back. I mean, if I'm Trey Murphy and they bring me off the bench again after I continue to be this guy who clearly impacts winning at a super high level, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be frustrated by what's happening here. Man, I don't think there's another market though. Here.
What do you think the holdup is? Teams aren't interested in BI, or is it that teams don't want to pay what BI wants, or is it that teams don't want to give up what the do the Pelicans need to lower their asking price?
I think it's probably a combination of all of those things, right? I think it's probably a combination of Pelicans are asking for a lot. Brandon Ingram is asking for a lot, which artificially deflates his market a little bit.
Yep.
And I would imagine there's a pretty significant gap in what the Pelicans see Brandon Ingram as versus what the rest of the league sees Brandon Ingram as on a deal that's going to pay him a substantial amount of money moving forward, especially because once you trade for Brandon Ingram, very similarly to what we saw with Emmanuel Quickley this summer, for instance, right? You lose a lot of leverage in those contract negotiations. And it becomes very difficult for a team to say to their fan base, oh yeah, we just traded for Brandon Ingram. We gave up, what the Pelicans want for Brandon Ingram. We're now just going to turn around and let him go in free agency, right? I don't know how well that goes over. Just in terms of teams that make sense, I guess you can still say Cleveland, but I don't know what to make of that at this point. You would have thought that any deal that you look at for Brandon Ingram, I feel like a deal probably would have happened. I'm sure the Pelicans and David Griffin and Bryson Graham, and when Trajan Langdon was there, I'm sure these guys have gone out and explored the market.
Well,
for
if the
Brandon.
Cavs were willing to give up Jarrett Allen, this deal would have already happened.
Correct.
Right.
To me, Milwaukee, the deal that still makes sense in my mind is because there were Brook Lopez rumors. I'm not sitting here and saying that trading Brook Lopez makes sense for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think trading Brook Lopez makes sense for the Milwaukee Bucks, and I wouldn't do it. But early in the offseason, there were Brook Lopez rumors of maybe he's available. Doing something along the lines of involving Brook Lopez and stuff for Brandon Ingram still is the thing that kind of tracks for me best. But I mean, other than that,
for what it's worth, I don't love that one because Giannis and Dame play with the ball so much. and BI doesn't help he doesn't help your defense. You know, at least Brook helps. He doesn't help your perimeter defense, but he helps back up. So can I throw out two teams as I've been looking through this that I just want to get your thoughts. What if the Warriors miss out on Lauri? Is there a trade there? Wiggins plus Moody get you close. And then, do you have to add one pick to that? How much better does that make the Warriors?
I mean, it helps. They need a second, creator.
So
on
that's
some
my
level,
thing.
right?
We talked about, even if it's just at least for the regular season, getting someone to take some of the offensive load off Steph Curry. Now, listen, I think we're going to talk about Lauri Markkanen in a second. I just want, you miss out on Lauri or it gets too big or whatever, you give up less for a Brandon Ingram in that situation.
The other team that I kind of thought about a little bit was I just don't know what Toronto is doing. Kind of I think that's just an overarching question. I'm just not totally sure what direction Toronto is going at this stage. Maybe they're a team where you can say, oh, Toronto, they don't have a ton of these bigger 6 foot, 6 to 6'9" creators outside of Scotty Barnes. Scotty's really the only one on the roster. I wonder if maybe that could make sense. Could you find a way to get to a salary number that way? Yeah, I see people saying that oh, the Bucks can't aggregate salary, because of the second apron concerns and things like that. You could involve a third team and send Pat Connaughton to a third team and make the money work in a Lopez and Ingram deal, if I remember correctly. But those deals are also hard. It's really hard to get three teams to agree on kind of everything within all of these, deals that make sense. So you have to,
okay, so what if Toronto really liked him? Could you configure something around Jakob Poeltl and Bruce Brown?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to me.
I'm not saying that's it. Don't freak out on me, people. I'm just Bruce Brown. I mean, that's a winning basketball player. I think he finds a role there, that just gives him another one of those guys. And Jakob Poeltl comes in and he's their starting center day one.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting one. They'd have to give up picks, and I don't know if they'd want to give up picks for Brandon, maybe, but money wise, that does kind of create an interesting.
It's close, right? 42.5. What's Brandon at?
35-ish.
Oh, so we're a little over. So they'd have to attach something with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's ways to make that money work.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's you'd have to attach different scenarios to the whole thing, and a huge thing for the Pelicans. David Griffin, in this radio interview that he had today, was clear that they're a small market team, and it's difficult for them to kind of end up in situations where they're going to be paying significant amounts of luxury tax. So that's a thing. I'm just it's just hard to find teams that make sense is kind of the issue for Brandon Ingram. And Toronto, you can at least make a relative case. I wouldn't do it if I was Toronto, but part of this is that I don't understand Toronto's position in what they're trying to accomplish either, I guess.
Yeah. No, I said that was just, you brought him up and I'm okay, well, this could kind of make sense for New Orleans with Brown and Jakob Poeltl. And so, yeah. Interesting.
It's an interesting one, at least. But look, Brandon, the key is, so I've seen people in the comments kind of ask, why have people soured on Brandon Ingram so much? And I'll find, shout out Ron Mexico. What an iconic name is. We have College Football 25 coming out this week.
I'm so sad because I know I'm not going to find time to do it, but I want to play so bad. Dynasty mode was my childhood. You ruined my day with that one. I've been trying not to think about it, Sam.
I'm ready for College Football 25, but it's not that people have soured on Brandon Ingram. It's that they don't want to pay him.
Yep.
as much as anything. The
Exactly.
second apron has teams. I mean, that is like the overarching thing that when you talk to people around the league here in Vegas, they're just really worried. If you're not contending for a title, like if you think that you don't yet have your team to win a title, which is ultimately the calculation that it seems like the Clippers, for instance, made with the Paul George thing. If you don't think you have the exact team that can go and have a reasonable chance to win the title, it is really, really hard to be willing to go into that second apron or to pay a contract that may not end up working out and puts you closer to the second apron without getting the commensurate value of what that deal is. So that's what I am. That's where I think there is a disconnect between how talented Brandon Ingram is as a player versus what he is as a quote unquote asset, maybe, let's say, league wide.
I think the other thing with BI is there's no denying the talent. He's not the number one guy on your team. And as a number two, I think you have to find the right number one, a guy that he will be able to play with the ball in hand, that they don't operate in the same space and kind of that mid range. If BI was a little bit more of just a true off ball, maybe run off some screens, catch and shoot, he kind of lived in that area, in that archetype, or maybe was a little bit more impactful defensively, something like that, I think people would see the value a little bit more. And I think that's the other aspect of this as well is, okay, is he a number two guy? If he's the number three guy, is his style of play fitting to be a number three guy? So I think all of those are sometimes hard whenever you're talking about fitting him into an already constructed roster.
And Ewan Ross asks, should Ingram just be treated as a rental? The problem with that is that the Pelicans are posturing as if he is still a core piece and still somebody that deserves the value in return of a player that can average 22, 5 and 5, or, 24, 5 and 5 over the last half of the season. I think he was like 18, 5 and 6, and it still just wasn't, quite as valuable as what those numbers indicated. It felt like, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him, because I buy him being valuable in the right situation. I don't think that the Pelicans are the right situation for him at this point, just because DeJounte and him occupy very similar spaces. They want to get into that mid-range area, even though they both theoretically can shoot. DeJounte certainly has improved as a shooter. Brandon, both of them are reluctant. I mean, DeJounte shot like 7 threes a game this year, but neither of them want to take that many threes. You know what I mean? They both want to drive and get into that mid-range area and play out of ball screens and do things like that. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like a fit now that they've made the DeJounte deal to me.
So what about, I keep going back to the Clippers, see if they would want to salvage this season as they're moving into a new arena. And then he said as a rental, is there anything there where you bring him in just to salvage the new arena and then you get a whole bunch of money off your books next offseason and kind of start fresh?
So that would involve them moving. They wouldn't pay Zubats, and then they would be moving Powell. The issue there is you already have CJ and DeJounte, but I guess Powell works as your third guard in that circumstance.
You're talking about the return to New Orleans now.
Yeah. So the problem is I think the Clippers want Zubats, and I think that they still haven't decided if they're not going to pay Zubats yet, although they do certainly want to continue to keep max cap space as an overarching kind of idea. Yeah.
I don't know. It was just does a Kawhi, BI, James Harden take you into this new arena for 1 year and at least sell the tickets and bring excitement and all of that? And then, hey, if we want to get off all of this money, we can still get off all of this money in the offseason. Or maybe BI is awesome and him and whoever fit really well together. Maybe you think you can build it out around BI moving forward and you pay him. I don't know. They were the one other team. I'm not saying it's a great idea. I haven't thought about it enough, but they were just another team. I was like, hey, maybe they would just like the name BI back in LA. They need to sell tickets and fill that place out.
Yeah. And you could theoretically make a case still then of, hey, we're going to move Kawhi at the deadline. We're going to build around like Brandon Ingram long term. I mean, that's a bad idea, but like we'll talk about the Clips. Honestly, I want to do like kind of a longer discussion on the Clippers at some point, because I don't know exactly where they're headed right now, and that's what's really interesting to me.
You want to
trying
talk
to figure
about
out
Jordan Miller scoring 30 points a game in summer league, just going crazy.
We're going to talk about Jordan here momentarily, but let's move to Lauri Markkanen now. Shams reported on Monday, I guess this was, that, you know, Lauri's obviously, this isn't news, but Lauri is obviously like the guy that everybody across the league wants, even more so than Brandon, because Lauri is just like an easier fit, kind of, not as on-ball dominant, much more of an off-ball player, great shooter, real scorer. Really, really interested to see kind of what Lauri would be in a different kind of situation where things aren't quite as built around him, where Will Hardy is like creating all of these awesome sets and all of these creative situations for him to be able to get loose. Having said that, like, it does seem pretty clear Utah is going to have a rebuild year this year. It seems like they are, I don't want to say like they're tanking. I think that they probably want to like be not disastrous, but they probably by the end of the year are going to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, right? And the question for them is, A, does Lauri hinder us from getting there? And B, is Lauri good enough to pay like significant amounts of money? Now, they have like a creative potential solution to this. He's making $19 million this year. They can give him like very substantial money in a renegotiation and extension, and then try to drop that number down over the course of that contract, or keep it static even potentially over the course of that contract, and allow, as the cap rises, Lauri's number based on a percentage of cap to potentially fall, which would be really useful. The name that Shams brought up is one that you brought up with Brandon Ingram, and it's the Golden State Warriors. According to Shams, the Golden State Warriors have been the most engaged team for Markkanen in recent weeks. They discussed a proposal around Moses Moody, multiple first-round picks, multiple pick swaps, and multiple second-round picks. However, the Jazz have asked for a bulk of the assets and draft capital the Warriors possess, including Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, and Brandon Podziemski. Shams then went on NBA radio and said it seems like Podziemski is the one that they really, really want. Now, everything that I know is that Lauri wants to be in Utah. I think that they would be fine doing an extension. Like, they'd have to come to an agreement on both sides, and I don't think there's like been a thing that has occurred. And this can't happen until August 6th. And I would imagine that the date where it will actually occur is August 7th, because if he waits until August 7th to sign the extension, so literally just waits 24 hours, then he can avoid being traded this year. And if he wants to stay in Utah, theoretically, you would want to avoid having to deal with a year of your name being in trade rumors, if only for a day at the deadline, right? Because if someone has an opportunity to trade you for one day, you can absolutely come up with that circumstance, right? So, and you would have to deal with like the concern over that in your mind. I still, and this is opinion, this is not reporting, I still think this probably is more likely to end with him just re-signing, is where I'm at. I think that they'll come to some agreement where if he does want to be in Utah, which, you know, it does seem like every report out of Utah is that, kind of what I've been told, like, is that Lauri really likes Utah, loves being there, is excited about being there. I think that there's just more leeway kind of going toward a trade than, or going toward him extending as opposed to a trade. That's kind of where I fall on it, I guess. Like, Lauri's a top 25 player in the league-ish, like something in that ballpark. Terrific offensive player, can play like the 3-4 and maybe even the 5 in some lineups. Just a really effective overall player.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm Utah, I think I would be inclined to keep him for now, unless somebody just gave me something ridiculous that
Yeah.
I just couldn't turn down. And, you know, obviously different level of players, but that's how I felt about the Denny Avdia trade with the Wizards. Like, if I'm the Wizards, I would love to keep Denny Avdia and on a great contract, but whenever I get offered what they got offered, I understand them making the move. And so with Lauri, like, because I think Lauri's such a good player to help these young guys grow because he provides great floor spacing, because he doesn't need to be on the ball all the time, because he can play multiple positions. He fits with, you can play him with Cody Williams or you can play him with Taylor Hendricks. It does not matter. If you get Cooper Flagg, you're going to be able to figure that out. If you end up with Ace Bailey instead of Cooper Flagg, you'll be able to figure that out. And so I like Lauri for that purpose. I would like to keep him as kind of the cornerstone, the first piece in my rebuild. And then, you know, you just got to hit on, you know, hope that a couple of these other guys, whether it's Williams or George or Hendricks or whoever you draft in 2025, I guess the big counter to me here is how many games does Lauri help you win? But
I don't know. Like, honestly, that Western Conference is a bear. Like,
so
is this team better with Lauri Markkanen than the San Antonio Spurs, as Victor is just like continuing to rise and just be unbelievable, right?
They're not, right? They're not.
I don't know that they are, honestly. Like, I don't think that they're better than Houston.
Okay, who's better? Victor's better than Lauri.
Yes.
Yes. So who's the second best player on the Jazz?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Sexton, Clarkson.
Probably it is Colin Sexton. It's definitely Colin Sexton. Sexton,
Okay.
I think, is actually pretty good now.
Okay, so is he crazy amounts better? Any better than Devin Vassell though?
I think Colin Sexton probably impacts winning a little bit more than Devin Vassell, based off of their play last season. If Vassell would take like a small leap this year, probably Vassell.
Point being,
but
and
like
then the
close,
Spurs have Chris Paul.
Could go either way.
Like, so, and Harrison Barnes. So, I mean, you know, whatever you want to say about Harrison Barnes, he's a vet that this Jazz team pretty much doesn't have. I mean, you have Clarkson and Collins.
I mean, they have like John Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
look,
this is a young team. It's like Keontae George, it's Walker Kessler, it's Taylor Hendricks, whatever he is, right? You have Cody Williams and Isaiah Collier, kind of like guys that you mentioned, whatever Bryce Sensabaugh maybe can be, right? Like, there's just there are a lot of dudes kind of there that are not going to help you win a lot of basketball games. If you're Golden State, let's talk about the Golden State piece of this, though.
Okay.
I think that if I'm Golden State, I understand why I'm going for Lauri. I think Lauri's like a perfect fit within their scheme. He's perfect next to Draymond. He's perfect next to Steph. He can be like a creator. He fits really well within, again, like their motion-y kind of offense that they like to run. I understand why Lauri would be the guy that you decide, hey, this is the player that can really help us kind of take that next step and keep this window open. I actually do think that as long as Steph stays like at the top 7 or so level that he's at right now, if you were to get Lauri and then you get a number of Draymond Green games that is significant, I still think that team has a chance at the top 4 spot in the West. I do. Plus Buddy Hield, plus Kyle Anderson, plus DeAnthony Melton. That's like
plus
a really
you're not
good group,
trading
actually.
All 3 of those young guys, right?
So
like, you're going to keep one of them.
That's what I want to talk about too, right? So if you're the Warriors, how do you rank those 3 assets?
Kuminga, Pods, Moody. I'm a Kuminga. Listen, I love Pajimski, but I was a Kuminga guy from the first time I stepped on the pod, and he had a good year. And I've said I think he might be their second leading scorer this year if this trade didn't happen. I'm a believer in Jonathan Kuminga. So I understand people who are going to say Pods. I'll take Kuminga.
So I think Kuminga has like a way higher upside than
Correct.
Pods does, like 100%.
Unequivocally. Yes.
And if you're Utah, you probably are gunning for that upside. I would want Kuminga.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think I would want the upside that Jonathan Kuminga can bring. I think I would rather do Kuminga and just have to pay him. But that is the thing here, right? Like Jonathan Kuminga is going to get probably $25 to $30 million at least, let's say, in an extension. And you really need to figure out how willing you are to pay that. I think the Jazz's specific situation where their books are going to be so open moving forward with all of the rookie scale guys, they're going to have all of these draft picks they have coming in. I think I would just rather go Kuminga than Pods, but it feels like I understand like you have 3 years of Brandon Pajemski.
Yep.
You feel like that's just the more valuable asset on a rookie scale deal.
It's a real part of the equation.
Yeah.
Would you trade all three of those guys, Sam? Would you trade, if you were Golden State, would you give up all three? Like, I don't think anyone as an individual is a deal breaker in a Lauri Markkanen trade. But when, and to me,
I wouldn't give up all of them with all of the picks is the thing.
Okay, so you would give up those three and 1 first round pick if that's all. I assume Ainge would ask for more than that and they would say no. But
right, like it's all a sliding scale to me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if you want all three, then like I'll give you a first round pick and a pick swap, and like that might be it. Right. Or like I'm just like throwing out, like, I'm not even saying like this is what I would do. I'm saying like for an example, right?
Yes.
If you want one of Pods or Kuminga plus Moody, I would give you, a few first round picks, a couple of pick swaps, things like that, right? If you're, saying, hey, we'll take Moody and the lesser guy that we want, it's more. We'll only take one of these guys and we want all of the swaps, which it seems like is Golden State's position now, and all the picks and all the swaps. Then maybe you find a different way in. Like it's just a sliding scale to me. The deal that like tracks to me is one of Pods or Kuminga, Moses Moody, who also you have to pay, by the way. Like he's coming up and probably wants some opportunity that he's not going to get in Golden State this year again because of D'Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson in all likelihood. Just signed all those guys this summer. They take up real spots. I would want one of those guys. I would want Moody, 3 picks, and a couple of swaps if I was Utah.
So I guess I was looking at this now, though. The money doesn't get there.
Yeah, I mean, you just throw in Wiggins or whatever.
So okay, so we're talking
money-wise.
Yeah, we're talking Wiggins also. I was just trying.
I don't know. Like that's where I'm at. Like I think it's like a reasonable-ish deal. I understand why Golden State wants him. He's really good, and he fits their scheme perfectly. And like they immediately become one of the best shooting teams in the league, right? Or, yeah, someone's saying you can do Gary Payton. You might be able to do Gary Payton.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
No, that's a good call. No, that's a good call. Yeah, Payton would get you there. Yeah, good call.
I'm trying to think of the math. Yeah, he would. Payton would get you there. Now that you say that.
16, 20. It'd be like 22.
Yeah, so it's more than what Lauri makes right now.
Yeah, talk and take more.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand why Golden State wants him. If I was Golden State, I think I would probably give up what I have to give up to get him, just because what are you doing otherwise? Like if you're not doing something like this, you should probably just be moving like on from this core at the end of the day.
The only way I believe in Steph, and I would assume the organization does as well. The only way I don't do this is if I don't believe in Draymond still being close to what Draymond has been. If whatever happened last year or age or whatever is not going to allow him to make the impact that we've seen from Draymond Green. And if you don't believe in that, then it is time to figure something else out but I think I don't know that. I don't want to say you owe it to Steph. I wouldn't want to waste any sort of Steph Curry's career.
To me, it's like the odds are you are not going to have another Stephen Curry within your organization anytime soon. And just from an overall team building perspective, is your best chance now to continue to build around Steph to win another title, or is it to look at trading him or do whatever, right? To me, it's still building around Steph and Draymond and figuring out where that lands.
So here's I brought this up briefly the last time we recorded. I know what I think the answer is, and I think I know what your answer is going to be. Is there any argument to the Warriors just saying, you know what, the West is absolutely insane, but we're going to play the depth card, and we're just going to have way more depth than everybody else, and we're going to try to maneuver our way throughout the regular season, potentially to the playoffs, because Steph is going to be unreal, Draymond's going to be back to form, maybe Wiggins has a bounce back, God,
the thing is, though, Bryce,
Kuminga takes a step forward, and you just beat everybody through depth of your roster.
The thing is, though, that I don't think a Markkanen deal stops that from happening.
You think that there's plenty of depth? They've built out enough depth, even with trading those guys. You think you still have plenty of depth?
I do.
Fair.
I do. Like, because they signed all of Hield, Anderson, Melton. You know, you would be moving two of these young guys, presumably, and Gary Payton. You would still have Wiggins. Like, you would have a number of players on this roster that can really go.
9 dudes that could play.
Yeah. So I think that they still have enough depth. But look, at the end of the day, I'm still going to ride with, I think this just ends up being a renegotiation and extension, because I think Utah will price Lauri higher than what I think a fair deal, quote unquote, is for everybody involved. Danny Ainge is involved. And from what I know, like, again, their position is that they don't want to trade him. I think that position is real, that they don't want to trade him. And if you don't want to move a guy, then the odds are you might move him, but you probably won't. Whenever you have like this much flexibility, the difference in the Jazz and the Pelicans positions is that the Pelicans are between a rock and a hard place with Brandon Ingram. They don't have any flexibility. They're going to be up against the tax. They have to like figure out how they're going to handle things. The Jazz have all the flexibility in the world. They have all the picks in the world. They can continue to build slowly around Lauri Markkanen and continue to be just fine doing so. Okay. Summer League thoughts, Bryce. Let's start here. How do you go about watching Summer League? How do you value Summer League? And what do you think is the most important thing to look for when it comes to Summer League basketball?
Well, that was a lot of questions. I watch Summer League in person, which I hate watching in person because I feel like I don't watch the game very well. I'm talking to people and getting distracted. And I when I watch in person, Sam, I realize how much I use the rewind button when I'm watching a game. This is why I don't even watch games live on my TV. Yeah. I'll just record them and then I can arrow back and forth, whatever. And so I really struggled at Summer League. I tried to really focus in because I knew we would be talking about it. But, I mean, lots of it was half a game. That's what my worry is. A lot of these guys I saw for half a game, and then I didn't see the second half. And so I don't want to give an overarching take to, not seeing the full game. What do I value? I value guys that look like they belong is such coach speak. I hate using that term, but it's not so much the guys that play extremely well, but I'm worried if I see a guy that looks lost out there or completely uncomfortable or can't find their jumper at all or defensive rotations or not being like the physicality of the game is catching up to them and they're struggling with that. I think one thing that really stood out to me about two guys that were really impressive, Reed and Steph, were just the way they controlled the pace of the game, the way they operated ball screens and had the control of the ball and the way they passed it. That stuff really stood out to me. And I value that stuff. I think that stuff translates now with Reed specifically. Like, can you do it against NBA level defenders? I don't know, but this is a good first step with that. What was the third question?
The value of Summer League. Let's go with.
I try to temper those type of things because guys can get on shooting hot streaks, right? So like somebody can go for 5 games and shoot lights out. And now I'm like, oh, Bobby Klintman's a shooter. He's knocking down shots. Like, he's going to be a knockdown shooter for the Pistons this year.
Bobby's game yesterday was like the classic Bobby Klintman game where he had 13 in the third quarter and had 5 in the other 3 quarters, and like was incredible and like completely exploded in that third quarter. And for him, it's just all about like harnessing that and making it consistent over the course of a full game. And I thought he rebounded like in the game, like at a much more effective level, but like it's the Bobby Klintman experience, like for sure.
So Klintman is 52% from the field, 47% from 3 on 7.5 attempts. The other guy in Detroit getting a ton of love is Dennis Jenkins. He's 48% from the field, way higher than college, 43% from 3 on 7 attempts, also higher than college. Again, I love these guys. Do your thing. Take advantage of your opportunities. Jenkins is on a 2-way right now. Klintman got his full, second round exception contract, but like, if those guys shoot over 40% from 3, they're going to be awesome. Do I think that's what's going to happen? Probably not. And so what are they if they're not shooting the ball? Like, Reed's is almost more impressive, Sam, because he's not exactly shooting lights out from 3 right now. And I still watch him play and like, man, he looks really good. And so I think you just look for those little things that you feel like can translate with also the nuance of, okay, what does this look like against a better defender? What does this look like against a better offensive player? If you're evaluating defense, here's the thing, Dalton Connect. I'll be interested to get your thoughts. Dalton Connect hasn't been crazy efficient, but I don't think a lot of the shots he's taking is what he's going to take in Lakers games. Like, I don't think he's just getting the ball and going ISO mode with LeBron and Austin Reeves and AD on the court. And so I don't like knock him as much for some of his efficiency, because these aren't the shots he's going to be taking exactly. It won't be the same shot diet.
Well, yeah, and he's hitting 41 from 3 now in Vegas, right? Like, he's actually making his threes now, which he didn't do. I think they were in California, if I remember correctly, and not Utah. Look, like in terms of the importance of Summer League, like what do I look for? What do I value? I just want guys to be like comfortable in the environment. You mentioned the speed of the game. Like, one guy that really stood out, I thought, beyond the rookies, right? Scottie Pippen used to always get super sped up. Scottie Pippen Jr., right? Yeah. Like, he always just looked like he was like flying a million miles an hour. In the Memphis game, like, he looked like he'd slowed down, and like he might be somebody that needs to play for Memphis actually at times this year, based on their roster with Ja Morant and Marcus Smart being guys that tend to miss time, right? So seeing Scottie Pippen like being a little bit slower and no longer, just being beholden to being faster than everybody and getting to the rim and everything like that was a thing that watching the Grizzlies game yesterday, I was like, okay, like this is a real tangible improvement to me that I'd like to see. I like to see the guys that I think are too good for Summer League prove that they're too good for Summer League. Like Cam Whitmore yesterday went 1 for 15 or whatever and just like didn't shoot well, and it was whatever, right? But the first 2 games, Cam Whitmore was fucking ridiculous. Like, he had 6 dunks in that second game. Like, I have no idea why they played him in the third game. It's completely nonsensical to me. Houston like played all of their guys so many minutes in that third game on the second day of a back-to-back in fucking Las Vegas for Summer League. Like, what is happening? What are we doing?
It's funny because the Pistons rested their 18-year-old rookie because it was the first of a back-to-back for them, and they said, no, we're good. We'll wait and play him tomorrow.
Yeah, and like Brandon Miller looked like a monster in that game. Like, he was in like second gear for the first part of it, and then he just like took over, right? Jaime Jaquez, like, it was really funny in his first game where it just felt like, all right, I'm just going to like get my buckets. I'm going to cut. I'm going to do the right things. And then as it got close, like late, I think it was against Boston, he's just like, no, fuck this. I'm taking over and winning. Like, we're just going to win. Right. Pods. Like, that's the stuff I like to see. Pods, like another great example. Pods like shouldn't play Summer League anymore. Like, he should be done. Like all these guys, I think were really impressive. But to me, like the top story here is just Reed.
Yeah.
The biggest takeaway from me, from most of the people I've talked to in terms of what matters at Summer League, I would say Reed is very clearly like the number one obvious takeaway. he just looks like a star. There's no other way to put it out there. His comfort, his shooting, he operates balls. He has not operated ball screens a ton throughout his career. He operates ball screens better than anybody right here at Summer League so far.
It's pretty impressive.
Like maybe like Scottie Pippen would be up there, I guess. But like the way that he plays with poise, the way he finds his way into the middle of the court, the ability to rise for those mid-range jumpers is real. Obviously, he's made 38% of his threes, which is a low number for him.
So that's why I was just laughing at myself, Sam, because I said, "Oh, it's not even like Reed has shot unbelievable from three," and then I looked at the numbers. It is 39% on volume. So the fact he's not shooting 50% is obviously like not good enough for me. So.
And then the passing, like he makes these obscene passing reads.
It's
like
awesome.
There was one, I was sitting underneath the basket.
I know which one you're talking about. I could see your facial expression from the other end of the gym, Sam.
Yeah, I was sitting I was talking to Tom Crean while it was happening, and I was just like, "Ooh!"
Yes.
He comes in and takes a ball screen, gets to like the elbow. The corner man takes the roller, and he just shoots that thing out in between two defenders, between a tight window, right to AJ Griffin for three. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is some serious half court passing skill.
Well, one of them he threw live left-hand dribble, like similar situation. It may have been this one, but like he's doing it with both hands. Like he can change velocities on it. Unfortunately, Orlando Robinson took one in the head from him. I was like, that didn't feel good. But
yeah, that's the other thing too. Like watching him, it's like, he's thinking the game like a step ahead of everybody else on the court out here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel absurd not having him at the reason that I feel bad not having him at number one is because I talked about him all year as if he was the guy that I had at number one. And I really probably should have just ranked him at number one. I had him at two, but like forget like the summer league thing. The summer league is like confirmation bias in some respect, but like, I feel bad for myself not having ranked him one when we talked about him all year, for me at least, as if he was the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still comfortable right now. We'll see what, I think Sarr's archetype, if it gets there, which like Summer League hasn't given him anybody a whole lot of offensive confidence. I don't think he's been great on that end. But I think where Reed was better than what I realized, and this is where I'll have to, if he ends up being the best player in the class, this is like where I'll have to make a note of. And again, we won't get into it too much because you've already stopped me before, but lessons I've learned from this draft and just watching him and Steph Castle at Summer League, I have to find a way to better evaluate guys operating ball screens and their potential to play on ball, just based off what we've seen, because both have been better than what I thought. I will say I'm still interested to see defensively how he holds up at the point of the attack.
It's been a problem, actually.
Yes, yeah. I don't want to like shit on him after we give him all this love and everything. But if we're being fair, there have been some concern. Although he still showed off insane hands, the accuracy and activity of his hands shows out and really helps make up for some of that.
I think that's right. It is definitely a situation where the hand strength like stands out. Like he's just really strong through his hands. And, that's something that seeing Alex Sarr, for instance, like continues to be an issue, right? Like his hands continue to be an issue for me. And that's something we talked about like throughout the year. I ended up with him at one, just I like the archetype player, and I hope that you can strengthen his hands to where he's able to grab the ball. But I think Alex honestly has been quite good on defense.
Yes.
To be honest with you.
Sure.
Like he's been really, really effective on defense. Same with Donovan Clingan. Like the numbers for those two guys, like they're not going to jump off the page because they're just not ready as shot creators yet. They're not ready they don't have great guards, like getting them the ball all the time. Like Bub has had like a couple moments getting him the ball, but like, Alex isn't like a downhill rim runner force, right? Donovan's not like a downhill rim runner force. Alex, I think, needs to just like, we'll talk about this when we do. So for people, wondering when we're going to do like a more substantial summer league deep dive, we're basically going to go through like player by player for the rookies and the sophomores over the course of the next two podcasts. So not like literally all of them, but the ones who have had like some sort of substantial growth or shown something in some way, played real minutes. Like for instance, I have yet to see Orlando It's summer league.
You need to watch.
And I know I need to watch. Like I just haven't been able to be in the gym for them. Right.
You know who's been awesome for Orlando that's not going to be part of the conversation, so I'll say it now, is James Huff. Huff has been.
Jay Huff can go. He's good.
Yes, he was awesome. The minutes I have watched, he's intense. He's physical. He's dunking on dudes. He's been really good. But Anthony Black was awesome. The game I saw, Tristan Da Silva has been really good, Sam. Really good. And he's obviously shooting at an unreal rate right now from three. And then Jet Howard has been making shots as well. But I thought my friend texted me very first game we watched. He's like, Anthony Black has been awesome. Like he's been the best player on the floor, even if the stats don't always show it. And that was game one against Cleveland.
Yep, I think that's right. I'm intrigued to kind of see it. I'm really intrigued to see it, honestly. Yeah, I'm excited to see that because Jay, I've thought Jay is like an NBA player for a while, so I'm like all in on this. This sounds great. If I was New Orleans, I'd be signing Jay Huff. Basically,
there you go.
I don't think he's a starter, but I'd be intrigued to see it. Plus, can shoot it a little bit, can space it. It's a good upside swing for New Orleans, I think.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to shit on the Magic, but like Huff needs to go somewhere else because there's no minutes for centers on that roster. Yeah, so like you need to find somewhere else. Yeah, go find somewhere else and find some minutes.
He'll go somewhere else. So we haven't talked about Ricochet yet. Ricochet is obviously the number 1 overall pick. I think he's looked great whenever he hasn't tried to do too much.
Sure.
I think he's had a lot of moments, and I've seen both of their games now. Probably seen 3/4 of his minutes. I mean that not in terms of quarters played, but like 75% of his minutes played so far in person. And I think he's looked great whenever he isn't trying to like prove that he can be a scorer and can like create off the bounce. I think when he's tried to do that, it's been a problem.
Sure.
It's been a problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And we talked about this is who he is, and if that part of his game develops, then he ends up being, worthy or even more, whatever, of the number 1 pick. He ends up being a really good player. But I think both of us kind of projected his archetype as this true 3-and-D wing. Play off of Trae Young, knock down shots in the weak side corner, be good enough to attack closeouts, get out in transition, build out your body so you can have more versatility defensively. And like for summer league, that's fine. Like I'm cool seeing him try to shoot some fadeaways and do some things and attack off the bounce. I'm okay with it. Let's see what you can do against this level of competition, but it's obviously not there yet. And I don't think Atlanta should expect or need him to do that this year. So he should be okay.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about him more and Sarr and Reed and all those guys in the next episode. Anyone else that you
just while we were there, Jurisic with the injury, fractured foot, I believe. So unfortunate for him. Yeah.
And then
down. Yeah.
The other one, unfortunately, that we should mention is Deron Holmes is going to miss the season with torn Achilles. I mean, we were both in the gym for that. We were sitting together when that happened. That sucked.
It was
fucking horrendous.
It was awful. It looked like you're
praying. It looked like he was fine. Like we were sitting there, we were like talking to everybody around us. Like we were like, this is like, he looks like he's okay. We think it's just like maybe like an ankle thing. He's walking up and down the sideline. He walked up on his own power, got off the court. Man.
I know when I got nervous for Deron Holmes was Calvin Booth was sitting probably 10, 15 rows in front of us. And when Calvin Booth got up and walked down, I think the vibe kind of changed. Like, oh man, this might be Calvin. The GM of the team doesn't get up to go down and look at a player for a rolled ankle unless he's just saying like, hey, he's not going back in. I'll leave it on a positive. Deron Holmes, I thought looked pretty darn good. Again, it was, 3/4 of a game, but he was 3 of 3 from 3. He did
worked his way into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't perfect. I'm not saying he was great or the best player on the floor, but he didn't have a rebound in the first half, came out in this third quarter, had 6 rebounds. You could tell he adjusted to it. He was trying to let the game come to him. Like I thought he looked solid, and especially the 3-pointer going down, which is something that'll be important for him. So just obviously prayers up for him. I believe he's already had the surgery and, hopefully, starting rehab and getting back to it. And we'll see him a year from now at Summer League next year. So,
yeah, hopefully he comes back healthy. I mean, for people who know, like I've interviewed Duran on this channel. You know, he's just like an unbelievably nice kid. Really, really just sucks that, you know, in his first professional game, pseudo professional game, that he tears his Achilles. It's a total bummer. And, you know, I think he would have played for them this year. The thing that is like good, I guess, for the Nuggets is that they signed Saric. You know, so they're not going to be as reliant on him to be able to play minutes, but now they're going to be very reliant on Saric, and I'd be pretty worried about that, to be honest with you.
Khalil Ware, do we need to talk about Khalil Ware?
We talked about him already, so let's maybe hold off and do him during the rookies.
I haven't seen Dillingham and Terrence Shannon. I have not seen a Timberwolves minute
Terrence Shannon has looked very good. Dillingham, I got told by one of their media people, is like kind of dealing with like a small, not like anything remotely serious, like he's dealing with like a smaller ankle thing, I guess, or like a foot or something like that. When he's been out there, like he just hasn't looked all that fast to me. So that tracks to me that like he might be dealing with something. You know what I mean? Where it's not serious enough for him not to play, but like just kind of diminishing his quality. So I don't want to, you know, go too far into Dillingham, but with Shannon particularly, I think Terrence has been quite good. I think Terrence has been just really physical and aggressive, and like the 24-year-old that you would expect to come into summer league and just like impose his will on things.
Any second rounders? I saw Furphy. I haven't seen Pacers, but Furphy had a decent game the other night, I believe.
Yep. I think Furphy's been really good for like the 3/4 of his games, right? Like he was really good in the first half of his first game, then he's really good in the second game, I thought.
Keyshawn Johnson has shown a few things. That was my guy. You know, as a second round pick type of player.
Yeah. AJ Mitchell has looked really good, I think, for Oklahoma City. The other guy I'll call out is Isaiah Stevens. I think Isaiah Stevens has been awesome for Miami. He's, you know, the game I saw against Boston, he had 11 assists and 1 turnover and 9 points, and like just completely orchestrated everything for them. I thought he looked better than their two-way Zion Poulin, who was just, you know, went undrafted this year. They've done it. You know, they look, the Heat have like a very real advantage against other teams in this circumstance because their track record of development is so good.
Sure.
That agents try, like if you go undrafted, agents are like trying to get their players to Miami into their development scheme because they know that they're going to be better at getting the most out of these undrafted guys than any other organization. That's what the track record says at this point. So like they do have an advantage on getting some of the best guys, but they continue to take advantage of it in a real way.
I want to shout out Adam Flagler. You know, as we're kind of just going, like Flagler is a kid that I got to interview back when I was writing at Draft Digest.
Unreal kid.
Unreal. So listen, one of the coolest things about Vegas is just the people you run into walking around the gym. And it was cool for me. Fans came up and said, what's up? You know, I didn't even tell you all the stories about the game theory fans that, you know, mentioned, or honestly, some of your colleagues, not really my colleagues, but your colleagues that would just like hit me like, hey, really like your guys' work and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm walking through the mezzanine or whatever, and Adam Flagler's just walking with the crowd. And he remembered, this was 2 years ago, one Zoom call, 30 minutes, and he remembered my face and dapped me up. Like we talked for 15 seconds, nothing crazy, but just, he was an unreal kid, like so nice, so polite. You know, I just told him, hey, you're doing great, you know, blah, blah, blah. But he's he's awesome.
Yeah.
He's shooting 50% from the field, 56% from 3 on 9 attempts. And had a good year in the G League last year as well with his shooting numbers. So just quick shout out for Adam Flagler also.
Yeah, no, I love it. We'll go into all these guys again.
Yeah. Like, my bad. He's just a second year guy. So yeah, my fault.
Last thing we have to talk about, since we've been talking about the summer league, Gary Trent Jr. is signed with Milwaukee. So this has been kind of the rumored ending spot out here, is that he would likely go to Milwaukee. I mean, how Gary Trent is ending up on a minimum, I mean, that is, or I think it's minimum.
I mean, I would assume minimum based on the tweet, right? If it wasn't a minimum, we would have got a number. Usually is the rule.
Well, just based on what their exceptions are. Like I don't.
Oh yeah,
because they're a, like second apron team. Like they don't have the non-taxpayer. Like they don't have anything.
They
like
don't
that.
have anything
so, like,
else. Yeah. Duh. Let's make it
simple.
more simple.
It's just wild to me that that seems like a real. I have some real questions on how things were handled there by his team. We'll say that. Number 2, awesome signing from Milwaukee.
Right?
Fucking incredible signing. And look, like, I'm not sitting here confirming for people that this is minimum. I'm just saying that, like, based off of the exceptions that I believe that they have, I think that it basically has to be a minimum, right?
I would guess.
Right? Like, that has to be it. So here's what I'll say. Throughout the year, you and I talked about, like, not being an enormous fan of Malik Beasley, right? Beasley is a slightly better shooter, I would say, than Trent, but Trent is just better on defense. He's more physical. He is capable of guarding more different player types, basically. This is like a starter for them, I think, almost immediately. Like, I would guess that he is probably their starting 2 guard this year. It'll be Dame, Gary Trent Jr., Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook, based off the way the roster is now. Then you have DeLon coming off the bench. You have Taurean Prince coming off the bench. I mean, Gary Trent had like a pretty solid year last year. Like, even though we're sitting here and he's getting, not a substantial amount of money, he averaged 14 points and shot 43% from the field and 39% from 3. And yeah, he's not overly quick defensively, and like, you can catch him sometimes, but he is physical. Like, he's willing to play.
Yeah, I mean, if it is the minimum, whatever it is, however they got him there, this is really good depth for this team. Whenever you're in their situation, I don't think you can be overly picky with, something like this. And so, yeah, I think this is a great pickup. I was talking to somebody at Summer League about, the players that were left. And I think the name, I don't know, for you, the name that got brought up first was always Tyus Jones, right? Like, is the name of, maybe the best player, or, why is this guy not on a team yet? But Gary Trent Jr. was always, and especially for me, the next name to follow. So for a team that can use depth, a team that can use shooting, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So per Spot Track with Keith Smith, shout out Keith.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, their only exceptions are trade exceptions. So unless they like find a way to execute a sign and trade with Toronto, they can't give him more than that. I actually don't even think you can't take a player back in a sign and trade when you're over the second apron, which they are. So no, like, this basically has to be the minimum, I think. And Gary Trent is not a minimum player. This is a home run for Milwaukee. And I mean, if I was Gary Trent, I'd be asking some questions on how I ended up on a minimum.
Yep. Agreed.
Huge. Look, he'll re-enter the marketplace next year, and look, I think he'll be getting more than the minimum. Let's go with, if you made me bet, as long as he stays healthy.
And like you said, he's going to have a huge role, so he's going to have every opportunity to go out and kind of prove himself and, make some money there. So
100%. Bryce, let's call it there. We'll be back on Thursday, I guess, your time, or Friday your time.
Friday, my time.
Yeah. Okay. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah. So at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, anything I put out, Substack, podcast, anything like that, find it on Twitter. So follow me there. The Pistons Pulse podcast, if you want any Pistons specific content. Otherwise, Game Theory podcast right here with Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. I'll have a summer league kind of wrap up thing at some point, probably next week, if you made me bet. For this week, not a crazy amount for me up there. I've just been kind of going around and meeting as many people as I can and talking to people at summer league and going out to dinner with Bryce. That's the key.
It was the best.
Went out with, yeah.
My buddy from high school, so my best friend from high school went out there as well, and he had dinner with us. Like, he had a blast. And what were the two? I was a little nervous, Sam, right? Because this is somebody that I've known for 20 years. Like, wow. And then you, who I've only known for a year. But, like, sometimes people don't have anything to talk about. Here was me during dinner.
Because you were on your phone.
Because you and Chris were talking about what? Texas
We were talking
Hold'em.
about poker. Yeah, we
Yeah,
were talking
and I
about
was like,
poker.
I'm
Chris had
checking
played.
out.
Chris had played in a couple tournaments while he was here, and we were talking about his bust out hands and diving deep into them in ways that were very nerdy.
Very nerdy.
Like
So
we were like bringing up like GTO Wizard and like talking about like everything like possible. Here's the bigger question, Bryce, and this is from Ejecto Cito. How short did Bryce make you feel when you were next to him? Here's the funny thing. Bryce's best friend, Chris,
taller.
fucking taller than Bryce is.
Yep. Yeah, we were on the same high school team in a very small school, and he's 6'7", 6'8", and I'm 6'6". I think what Sam spent most of the games laughing at me because I have very physical reactions to things that are happening on the court. And so I could always hear him just cackling as I would throw my hands up or do this or whatever. So, it was a fun experience for sure. But yeah, I went to supper worried like, man, Sam is going to be bored. This may not go well. And 15 minutes in, I'm on my phone because they're talking about shit I don't care about.
Yeah, there was no chance of that.
And then it turned to basketball and we had a blast.
Keep it locked here at the Game Theory Podcast. We'll be back on Friday. Until next time, we'll talk soon.